This is Kate at the Library of Whispers, and today I'm going to read the next chapters of Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. So we are on chapter 11, What I Heard in the Apple Barrel. No, not I, said Silver. Flint was captain. I was quartermaster. Along of my timber leg. The same broadside I lost my leg. Old Pew lost his deadlights. It was a master surgeon, him that amputated me, out of college and all, Latin by the bucket, and what not. But he was hanged like a dog, and sun-dried like the rest, at Corso Castle. That was Robert's men, that was, and comed of changing names to their ships, Royal Fortune and so on. Now, what a ship was christened, so let her stay, I says. So it was with the Cassandra, as brought us all safe home from Malabar, after England took the Viceroy of the Indies. So it was with the old Walrus, Flint's old ship, as I've seen a muck with the red blood and fit to sink with gold. Ah, cried another voice, that of the youngest hand on board, and evidently full of admiration. He was the flower of the flock, was Flint. Davis was a man, too, by all accounts, said Silver. I never sailed along of him, first with England, then with Flint. That's my story, and now, here on my own account, in a manner of speaking, I laid by 900 safe from England, and 2,000 after Flint. That ain't bad for a man before the mast, all safe in bank. T'ain't turning now, it's saving, does it? You may lay to that. Where's all England's men now? I dunno. Where's Flint's? Why, most of 'em aboard here, and glad to get the duff. Been begging before. Before that, summonin'. Old Pew, as he had lost his sight and might have thought shame, spends £1,200 in a year like a lord in Parliament. Where is he now? Well, he's dead now, and under hatches, but for 2 years before that, shiver my timbers, the man was starving. He begged and he stole and he cut throats and starved at that by the powers. Well, it ain't much use pistol in banks and places, answered his companion. It were, said the cook, it were when we weighed anchor, but my old missus had it all by now, and the spy-glass is sold, lease and goodwill and rigging, and the old girl's off to meet me. I would tell you were, for I trust you, but it'd make you jealous among the mates. And can you trust your missus? asked the other. Gentlemen of fortune, returned the cook, usually trusts little among themselves, and right they are, you may lay to it, but I have a way with me, I have. When a mate brings a slip on his cable, one as knows me, I mean, it won't be in the same world with old John. There was some that was feared of Pew, and some that was feared of Flint, but Flint his own self was feared of me. Feared he was, and proud. They was the roughest crew afloat, was Flint's. The devil himself would have been feared to go to sea with them. Well, now I tell you, I'm not a boasting man, and you've seen yourself how easy I keep company, but when I was quartermaster, lambs wasn't the word for Flint's old buccaneers. Ah, you may be sure of yourself in old John's ship. Well, I tell you now, replied the lad, I didn't half a quarter like the job till I had this talk with you, John, but there's my hand on it now. And a brave lad you were, and smart too, answered Silver, shaking hands so heartily that all the barrel shook, and a finer figurehead for a gentleman of fortune I never clapped my eyes on. By this time I had begun to understand the meaning of their terms. By a gentleman of fortune they plainly meant neither more nor less than a common pirate, and the little scene that I had overheard was the last act in the corruption of one of the honest hands, perhaps of the last one left aboard. But on this point I was soon to be relieved, for Silver, giving a little whistle, a third man strolled up and sat down by the party. Dick Square, said Silver. Oh, I know Dick was square, returned the voice of the coxswain. Israel hands, he's no fool is Dick, and he turned his quid and spat. But look here, he went on, here's what I want to know. Barbecue, how long are we going to stand off and on like a blessed bumboat? I've had a most enough of Captain Smollett. He's hazed me long enough, by thunder. I want to go into that cabin, I do. I want their pickles and wines and that. Israel, said Silver, your head ain't much account. Nor never was, but you're able to hear, I reckon. Leastways, your ears is big enough. Now here's what I You'll have your mouthful of rum tomorrow, and go hang. Everybody knowed you was a kind of a chaplain, John, but there's others that could hand and steer as well as you, said Israel. They liked a bit of fun, they did. They wasn't so high and dry, nohow, but took their fling like jolly companions, every one. So, say Silver, well, and where are they now? Pew was that sort, and he died a beggarman. Flint was, and he died of rum at Savannah. Ah, they was a sweet crew, they was, only where are they? But, asked Dick, when do we lay 'em athwart? What are we to do with 'em anyhow? There's the man for me, cried the cook, admiringly. That's what I call business. Well, what would you think? Put 'em ashore like maroons. That would have been England's way. Or cut 'em down like that much pork. That would have been Flint's or Billy Bones. Billy was the man for that, said Israel. Dead men don't bite, says he. Well, he's dead now hisself. He knows the long and short in it now, and if ever a rough hand come to port, it was Billy. Right you are, said Silver, rough and ready, but mark you here, I'm an easy man. I'm quite the gentleman, says you, but this time it's serious. Duty is duty, mates. I give my vote. Death. When I'm in Parliament and riding in my coach, I don't want none of those sea lawyers in my cabin a coming home unlooked for, like the devil at prayers. Wait, is what I say, but when the time comes, why, let her rip. John, cries the coxswain, you're a man. You'll say so, Israel, when you see, said Silver. Only one thing I claim. I claim Trelawney. I'll wring his calf's head off his body with these hands. Dick, he added, breaking off, you just jump up like a sweet lad and get me an apple to wet my pipe like. You may fancy the terror I was in. I should have leapt out and run for it if I had found the strength, but my limbs and heart alike misgave me. I heard Dick begin to rise, and then someone seemingly stopped him, and the voice of Hans exclaimed, Oh, stow that! Don't you get sucking off that bilge, John. Let's have a go at the rum. Dick, said Silver, I trust you. I've a gauge on the keg, mind. There's the key. You fill a pannikin and bring it up. Terrified as I was, I could not help thinking to myself that this must have been how Mr. Arrow got the strong waters that destroyed him. Dick was gone but a little while, and during his absence Israel spoke straight on in the cook's ear. It was but a word or two that I could catch, and yet I gathered some important news, for, besides other scraps that tended to the same purpose, this whole clause was audible. Not another man of them will chine. Hence there were still faithful men on board. When Dick returned, one after another of the trio took the pannikin and drank. One to look, another with a hero to old Flint, and Silver himself saying, in a kind of song, Here's to ourselves, and hold your luff, plenty of prizes, and plenty of duff. Just then a sort of brightness fell upon me in the barrel, and looking up, I found the moon had risen, and was silvering the mizzen-top and shining white on the luff of the foresail, and almost at the same time the voice of the lookout shouted, Land ho! south, behind an islet, I fancy," asked the captain. "Yes, sir, Skeleton Island they calls it. It were a main place for pirates once, and a hand we had on board knowed all their names for it. That hill to the north, they called it the Foremast Hill. There are 3 hills in a row running southward, fore, main, and mizzen, sir. But the main, that's the big un, with a cloud on it, they usually calls the Spyglass, by reason of a lookout they kept when they was in the anchorage cleaning. For it's there they cleaned their ships, sir, asking your pardon." "I have a chart here," says Captain Smollett. "See if that's the place." Long John's eyes burned in his head as he took the chart, but by the fresh look of the paper I knew he was doomed to disappointment. This was not the map we found in Billy Bones' chest, but an accurate copy, complete in all things, names and heights and soundings, with the single exception of the red crosses and the written notes. Sharp as must have been his annoyance, Silver had the strength of mind to hide it. "Yes, sir," said he, "this is the spot to be sure, and very prettily drawed out. Who might have done that, I wonder? The pirates were too ignorant, I reckon. Aye, here it is, Captain's Kidd's Anchorage, just the name my shipmate called it. There's a strong current runs along the south, and then away nor'ard, up the west coast. Right you was, sir," says he, "to haul your wind, and keep the weather of the island. Leastways, if such was your intention as to enter and careen, and there ain't no better place for that in these waters." "Thank you, my man," says Captain Smollett. "I'll ask you later on to give us a help. You may go." I was surprised at the coolness with which John avowed his knowledge of the island, and I own I was half frightened when I saw him drawing nearer to myself. He did not know, to be sure, that I had overheard his counsel from the apple barrel, and yet I had by this time taken such a horror of his cruelty, duplicity, and power, that I could scarce conceal a shudder when he laid his hand upon my arm. "Ah," says he, "this here is a sweet spot, this island, a sweet spot for a lad to get ashore on. You'll bathe and you'll climb trees, and you'll hunt goats, you will, and you'll get aloft on them hills like a goat yourself. Why, it makes me young again. I was going to forget my timber leg, I was. It's a pleasant thing to be young, and have 10 toes, and you may lay to that. When you want to get a bit of exploring, you just ask old John, and he'll put up a snack for you to take along." And clapping me in the friendliest way upon the shoulder, he hobbled off forward and went below. Captain Smollett, the squire, and Dr. Livesey were talking together on the quarter-deck, and anxious as I was to tell them my story, I durst not interrupt them openly. While I was still casting about in my thoughts to find some probable excuse, Dr. Livesey called me to his side. He had left his pipe below, and being a slave to tobacco, had meant that I should fetch it, but as soon as I was near enough to speak, and not to be overheard, I broke out immediately. "Doctor, let me speak. Get the captain and squire down to the cabin, and then make some pretence to send for me. I have terrible news." The doctor changed countenance a little, but next moment he was master of himself. "Thank you, Jim," said he, quite loudly. "That was all I wanted to know," as if he had asked me a question. And with that he turned on his heel and rejoined the other two. They spoke together for a little, and though none of them started or raised his voice, or so much gentleman that does it. The cheer followed. That was a matter of course, but it rang out so full and hearty that I confess I could hardly believe these same men were plotting for our blood. "One more cheer for Captain Smollett," cried Long John, when the first had subsided, and this was also given with a will. On the top of that, the three gentlemen went below, and not long after, word was sent forward that Jim Hawkins was wanted in the cabin. I found them all three seated round the table, a bottle of Spanish wine and some raisins before them, and the doctor smoking away with his wig on his lap, and that I knew was a sign that he was agitated. The stern window was open, for it was a warm night, and you could see the moon shining behind on the ship's wake. "Now, Hawkins," said the squire, "you have something to say. Speak up." I did as I was bid, and, as short as I could make it, told the whole details of Silver's conversation. Nobody interrupted me till I was done, nor did any one of the three of them make so much as a movement, but they kept their eyes upon my face from first to last. "Jim," said Dr. Livesey, "take a seat." And they made me sit down at table beside them, poured me out a glass of wine, filled my hands with raisins, and all three, one after the other, and each with a bow, drank my good health and their service to me for my luck and courage. "Now, Captain," said the squire, "you were right, and I was wrong. I own myself an ass, and I await your orders." "No more an ass than I, sir," returned the captain. "I never heard of a crew that meant to mutiny, but what showed signs before for any man that had an eye in his head to see the mischief and take steps according. But this crew," he added, "beats me." "Captain," said the doctor, "with your permission, that's Silver, a very remarkable man." "He'd look remarkably well from a yard-arm, sir," returned the captain. "But this is talk. This don't lead to anything. I see 3 or 4 points, and with Mr. Trelawney's permission, I'll name them." "You, sir, are the captain. It is for you to speak," says Mr. Trelawney grandly. "First point," began Mr. Smollett. "We must go on, because we can't turn back. If I gave the word to go about, they would rise at once. Second point, we have time before us at least until this treasure's found. Third point, there are faithful hands. Now, sir, it's got to come to blows sooner or later, and what I propose is to take time by the forelock, as the saying is, and come to blows some fine day when they least expect it. We can count, I take it, on your own home servants, Mr. Trelawney." "As upon myself," declared the squire. "3, reckoned the captain. "Ourselves make 7, counting Hawkins here. Now, about the honest hands." "Most likely Trelawney's own men," said the doctor. "Those he had picked up for himself before he lit on Silver." "Nay," replied the squire, "Hans was one of mine." "I did think I could have trusted Hans," added the captain. "And to think that they're all Englishmen," broke out the squire. "Sir, I could find it in my heart to blow the ship up." "Well, gentlemen," said the captain, "the best that I can say is not much. We must lay to, if you please, and keep a bright lookout. It's trying on a man, I know. It would be pleasanter to come to blows, but there's no help for it till we know our men. Lay to and whistle for a wind. That's my view. Jim here," said the doctor, "can help us more than anyone. The men are not shy with him, and Jim is a noticing lad. Hawkins, I put prodigious faith in you," added the squire. I began to feel pretty desperate at this, for I felt altogether helpless, and yet, by an odd train of circumstances, was indeed through me that safety came. In the meantime, talk as we pleased, there were only 7 out of the 26 on whom we knew we could rely, and out of these, 7